We've seen reality blend into alternate reality in Perfect Blue and in Black Swan, but not like this. So an actress gets the role of her dreams in the reproduction of a cursed film. It's the role of her dreams and it's the role of her nightmares. It becomes the role of many interwoven lines and realities. It's Laura Dern. It's a woman in trouble. It's a woman haunting a film within a haunting film, haunted by a film, experienced by a woman. It's Laura Dern. It's Watch This with Rick Ramos. It's David Lynch's Inland Empire.
I I find David Lynch to be an incredibly troubling filmmaker, incredibly troubling to watch. At this age, and over the last, I guess, 10 years, when you took me to see, I believe it was Wild at Heart. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because we've talked about this. Not to say like, well, what is he talking about? But I think that was the first time that I really started to embrace some of the more uh, more more challenging and difficult Lynch films. I had been a big fan of The Straight Story. I really liked that film. I loved um, Richard Farnsworth, Sissy Spacek, and that moment that you get with Harry Dean at the end. An exceptional film, but very un-Lynch, not Lynchian, not outside of whatever it is that you expect David Lynch to be, beginning with that Disney logo coming up at the beginning of the film. I mean, it's just this is not the guy that did Blue Velvet, and yet it is the guy that did Blue Velvet. With these constraints, I don't know what to say. Um, but at a certain there comes a certain point in your movie watching life where you turn a corner and you start to understand things differently. Now that's for some of us. Some of us don't do that. Some of us abandon. Some of us stay on the track that we've always been. Some of us go with what the new thing is, and some of us are dismissive of what has come before. With Lynch, I find myself being able to fall into and embrace the dreaminess, the dreamlike elements of his filmmaking. And as such, films like Blue Velvet, Wild at Heart, Lost Highway, but especially Mulholland Drive, really grabs a hold of your psyche and your emotional movie watching experience. Inland Empire is a film that at this point, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there's only one feature length narrative of his that I haven't seen. That's Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, and I've just finished the original 88, 89, 89, 90 seasons. So I'll be embarking on Fire Walk with Me into the recent limited edition. I only say this because I wanna be very clear about my relationship with Lynch. Um, I I only have one film left to look forward to, but I gotta say, I don't know. I kind of wanted to title this episode "What the fuck did I just watch?" Because if I were to be completely honest, I have no idea what this movie is. I really don't know what the fuck is going on, and yet I enjoyed it immensely. Now the
You did.
question, yeah, oh yeah, I did. I enjoyed it. Um, the question becomes, do I fill in the blanks for my late and rather recent, my recent and rather late em- embrace and appreciation of David Lynch, and as such, am I cutting him too much slack? Is there too much fat on this film? Is this film too ridiculous, or every is it either every bit of David Lynch that we've been preparing for and Lynch has prepared us for, or is it Lynch so out of control and so far up his own ass that it's confusing? I don't know. I really don't know. But on a visceral level, there is something about it that really draws me in from the beginning to the end. I'm sure you could shorten this film by half hour to an hour, and
Yeah,
you would still have as fucked up a film, but it would be a shorter film. But there's
right.
nothing in the film. There's nothing in the film that I can honestly say does not belong in this particular film. I'm really interested because you're a fan of David Lynch. You've been a fan of David Lynch a lot longer than I have. You have a much, um, I think you have a very different appreciation from him than I do. So I'm really interested in what your reading of this film is, um, and because all roads lead back to Rick Ramos, as we said earlier in the conversation. You called it Rome, but I say Ramos. Um,
Yeah, because as evidence of all roads leading back to RickRamos. So of course Rome means RickRamos, you
that's
know?
right. That's right. 12 years. How many years? 9 years of roads leading back to Rick Ramos.
Well, how old are you? How many years?
Oh shit. Well, let's. Yeah, 49. And
Yeah.
how long? How old is this show? The point is, it's in your opinion, am I cutting this film too
Hmm.
many? Am I cutting this film too much slack?
Maybe. I mean,
Okay.
the thing is that like I think the insights aren't gonna come from me because it's if it's like I'm already have the ticket to like I already have my passport. I'm already like a citizen of fucking David Lynch land, you know? Does that mean that I fucking understand it? No. Um, but like maybe the person like visiting David Lynch land um is going to maybe see things that like I've been sitting in the dark too long, maybe.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that I'm this fucking David Lynch aficionado because I'm not. Um, I do like I've seen all of his films and probably most of his shorts. Maybe I don't know about most, but I've seen a lot of his shorts.
Hmm.
Um, the newest Twin Peaks, no, because I've really wanted to like that's a commitment, and
Yeah.
particularly one episode that I don't know about it, but it's been like built up. Like I want to commit to it and go through that. Basically, what you're doing now.
Hmm.
Um, but I mean, this is a long ass. What is Inland Empire? It's a long ass art film.
Yeah.
Um, and so a lot of times in the past, you and I have gone back and forth um, on areas that involve traditional narrative and plot and connection to character and character revelation and character art. Um, and I've been like, well, you're wanting these things from these films that are not designed to
Hmm.
provide those things because the film is designed to provide something different. So, for example, this film is not plot driven. Um, it's experienced more as a series or sequence of scenes. Um, so it moves forward in time, but it's not like a plot is, for example, I've heard it, and I don't know who this comes from. I can't source it, whatever. But a story is the queen died, the king died. That's a story. A plot is the queen died, and then the king died of grief. That's a plot. So a plot is basically dominoes. This happens, and that leads to that happening, and then that, and then that, and then that, and then that. Because each domino hits the domino in front of it. A sequence is just this, then that, then that, then that, and that, and there's a difference there. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's based on like one action leading to consequences that lead to another action that lead to another action that lead to another action. It's just a sequence. It's just kind of like this, then this, and they don't have to be related. They just follow each other. One comes after another, so then you create, there's movement in time, right? Now this has these sequences that sometimes reference each other, but they don't necessarily drive the plot forward. Sometimes they do. The expectation in like conventional or fucking vanilla cinema, or your night at the movies is what? You go to the theater or your living room or whatever the fuck it is nowadays, or your phone or whatever,
Yeah.
and you follow the story. You get invested emotionally, dramatically, intellectually, and it ends and you like it or you don't like it, and then you move on to whatever the fuck else you do with your life. That's on average. Some shit is just more of what is the experience of sitting there dealing with this film as it's happening, or a concept. Like conceptual art is the artist wants to realize in some external way an idea, but wants to embody the idea externally somehow, and that's going to elicit some kind of response from the audience. And so it's like, well, this framed thing of my semen represents it represents the artist as creator, but because the semen is not fertilizing an egg, all art is futile. Therefore, it's luxurious because it's not needed in this world, but it can still enrich us in its saltiness and sweetness as semen. And that's my fucking nasty ass fucking impromptu metaphor. Do you guys get it? That's conceptual art versus I'm gonna fucking draw my beautiful neighbor. You know what I mean? Like I want to make her a portrait. Anyway, you don't get with Lynch in general those expectations as an art film. It's told from a distance. You know you're watching art cinema. It's more about vision than necessarily emotional engagement or story, even though there is emotional engagement with these intense scenes. And here the through line is more than the character, because it's characters and the narratives are like interwoven. The through line is fucking Laura Dern herself and her emotional engagement with the material. Now, a counter to that, when you ask me, is it cutting too much slack? The counter to that argument is like, okay, but after a while, if you've seen one digital video close up of Laura Dern's face, like you've seen them all. At what point, and I don't necessarily believe this, but I think that there is that. I mean, you could still cut from this film. Are there diminishing returns to what can be done with this film? Having said that, like you haven't seen all the Laura Dern close-ups that you can see until you've seen this film. Once you've seen this film, then you're like, oh fuck, like I saw a close-up of Laura Dern's fucking soul, you know? Like from the inside looking out. Um, and it can still be intense and emotional and entertaining without knowing what it's quote unquote about. Um, the 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 long aspect of it is like, and this is kind of like what we've talked about with Tarkovsky and Bellatar.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is that this doesn't use time as an experiential quote unquote narrative tool the way that Tarkovsky talks about sculpting in time, or the way that um, Bellatar uses time either as cyclical or in this like elongated ass fucking feeling of now, like where you're sitting there watching a movie, and because you feel time pass in your chair, it means something not only about what's being revealed in front of you on the screen, but also about time itself and our experience of time. So you can't just escape. I'm gonna go to the movies and I'm gonna escape my life and go into this thing. No, I'm gonna go to the movies and I'm gonna fucking feel the heaviness and the slowness of time as I sit there watching someone else feel the heaviness and slowness of time. And I mean, some people are gonna say, "Well, that's not fucking my idea of a Saturday night." Um, well, go watch fucking X-Men. Um, it's experienced in this film through editing and that interweaving of story elements and fragments. So it doesn't have to be as long to be effective because it's not using time in the same way. So the argument on that side is, well, yeah, you can cut it because you can cut it and still make it jumbled up and confusing and powerful.
Mm-hmm.
But the counter argument to that is that, I mean, by the time that I got to the end of the film, I was asking myself, like, is this a masterpiece? Um, while at the same time saying, like, who cares if it's a masterpiece? I don't even know how do I begin to kind of start that argument? Like, what are the criteria?
Mm-hmm.
Blah blah. And so to me, this was not about. I dispensed with understanding. I dispensed with symbolism and intellectualization. Um, even though I'm making conceptual arguments right now, but I'm not making them. I'm not trying to figure out what this film means. I'm not trying to figure out what it means to me. I'm not interested in thematics. I'm not interested in psychology. Maybe I'm interested in that for Wizard of Oz, but I'm not for this, because for this, my go through of this film, um, this time, which was similar to, I've seen it like two other times, is to just experience the film, to just sit in the film and allow it to be whatever the fuck it is. Um, and maybe that's why it doesn't feel as self-indulgent. That doesn't feel like David Lynch is being super self-indulgent, maybe because it's right away we're just submitting to the fucking craziness of it. We're going for the ride.
You know, in a lot of cases of modern art, people will look at a painting in a museum, framed on a wall, and they'll say, "Well, my kid could have done that." You know, and as if I'll take a perfect example: Pollock. Pollock is drippings on a canvas. Anybody can do it. But if you've ever stood in front of a Pollock, and I've stood in front of a Pollock, once.
Chicago?
Chicago.
Yeah.
The Art Museum of Chicago.
Big.
I saw it. It was huge.
Yeah, big.
And it is just dripping on a canvas, but it's overwhelming.
But it's not just dripping on, you know what I mean?
It is, but it isn't. And
Yeah.
that's a fucking tired, old, and meaningless cliche, but it is apt because what I guess it was his ability to see the power of chaos and to capture it and put it up there in a way that nobody had ever done before. And I was overwhelmed. And I think I saw the white canvas with black and gray and white painting on it. And it was just I'm not an art critic. I'm not an expert. I don't know the style. I don't know. I can't speak to you on I can't speak to you from the standpoint of knowing what has come before and what it has influenced. All I can tell you is I stared at that picture for a good, I don't know, 10, 12, 15 minutes. And I didn't know what to make out of it. I just knew that I knew it was hitting me on a weird level that I couldn't understand. And as I got older, I reflect on that and I realized I don't want to understand. Um,
Hmm.
that's a lot like Inland Empire, is that uh, I think it's a little bit more, it's definitely not as singularly artistic because, and what I mean by that is that David Lynch isn't Pollock with a canvas throwing it up there. He's dependent on Harry Dean. He's dependent on Jeremy Irons. He's dependent on how this lighting is going to work with this video camera, the editing, and most importantly, he's dependent on Laura Dern.
Hmm.
And I gotta say, she gives a fucking incredible performance. I think it's a great performance, and I think it's
Multiple
plays
performances. Yeah.
exactly. There is depths to which she goes that um I've always liked her as an actress, but I've never really invested in her until now. This is one of the great things about movies is that when you see something like this, it makes you want to go back to it makes you want to go back to Blue Velvet, to Lost Highway, not to Lost Highway, but to Wild at Heart, and even to Jurassic Park and some of the other stuff that she's done. And I want to see what it is that she's doing because based on just this, I imagine that has and does continue to do things for the paycheck. However, she isn't as I don't think that she can do those things, cashing those checks without bringing a certain level of artistic integrity to even the most mundane of films and acting roles. In a weird way, she's kind of like her co-star from Wild at Heart, Nicolas Cage, who I feel, right or wrong, and I haven't seen everything, but I've never seen anything where he half-assed it. He's always been 100% Nicolas Cage going balls to the wall, putting something crazy up there, regardless of how bad the film is. And he's done some incredibly bad films. But this is the kind of thing that makes you want to. This makes you. I don't think I'll be able to watch Jurassic Park with the same dismissiveness. And I don't say that as I look at it because it's a good film. It's well made. It's um it's good for what it is too.
Hmm.
It is Jaws on land with dinosaurs and the ridiculousness of all that, but it's got that Spielberg magic to it. But it's
Hmm.
going to be hard to watch the movie and watch her doing that without thinking of this because I've seen her completely naked
Yeah.
at this point. You know what I mean?
Yeah. As the
Yeah,
fucking dinosaur. Yeah.
yeah.
Not literally, but
Yeah,
yeah.
but yeah. So it's like I consider this I consider this film both disturbing and difficult. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody that I know because I don't. I movies like this are hard to recommend because I don't want to hear about it afterwards. I don't want to hear somebody come up because I think I would probably lose a certain degree of respect for somebody if I recommended this movie and then I had to hear what the fuck is wrong with you recommending that shit. I turned that shit off in about 15 minutes in. That was bullshit. It was a fucking video camera. I could have shot it with a video camera. What are you fucking kidding me? And
Yeah,
but that's the consensus of a lot of people. That's the attitude that a lot and don't get me wrong. I hate the video. It slowly becomes something that I sell out to. But I don't like video. I don't like feature films shot on video. It just it's a personal it's a personal problem. But
yeah, it just doesn't seem as romantic or
no,
whatever.
yeah, it doesn't
Oh,
meet what I have come to expect from cinema. But I am I am versed enough in what is going on as to know, number one, there's no way that he could have shot this on film. I don't think, and come in at the budget that he needed in order to get it done. And I appreciate his integrity in being able to shoot something that was experimental in that sense. I like the experiment of it. That part of it doesn't work for me as much, but I have to sell out to it. It's the same way that I feel about Bamboozled, where the Spike Lee film would be much better if it was shot on film. For me, I don't think it
hmm
would add, but Lee does something different where he shoots the production on film, whereas every
hmm
other aspect of the film, and we'll get to that film at a certain point, but the back and forth here, not just jumping in time, but jumping back and forth between separate stories. Some of them Dern playing the character in three different stories. Am I right there? Three stories. There's the beaten, abused wife or girlfriend. There's the actress, and then there's the story within the story, the film that they're making.
The
But
film.
yeah, the film
Yeah.
within the film within the video, which I thought was really interesting. That it's that jumped out at me quite a few
Right.
times. Where they're shooting a movie on film, but the whole thing is on video. And he's capturing it from the video aspect of it. It's just like, oh my god, this is fucking frustrating. But then also
Yeah.
these scenes set on the streets of Poland, of Warsaw, or I don't know where the fuck it could be, but a meetup in a hotel room between a whore and either her pimp or her John or prospective John or prospective pimp. I don't know. I don't know what the fuck any of it has to do. Am I missing something? What does
And these prostitutes
and
and
yeah, and then this fucking weird locomotion dance, which I saw that one coming. I got to give it to him. That wasn't. I saw that one, so Lynch didn't surprise me on that one. Where I'm gonna see, but then they're all sitting around. I don't know, and then they come back later on. They start off as cute whores, but then you see them later where it looks like they've been on the street for a while, and they've turned into Deadwood gem whores. It's fucking weird, man. I mean, there's a lot.
then the rabbit sitcom.
Okay, the rabbit sitcom. That's probably going to be the thing that grabs the most attention and makes people wonder what the fuck. And I can't explain it except to say that dreams don't make sense. But there's it's her because she goes into that same set, right? If I'm remembering correctly,
She
she goes.
goes, well, there, yeah, but there's also the aspect of like, she goes into, at one point, so at one point she wants this role,
Hmm.
and this lady comes and visits her, and that's one of my favorite scenes in the film.
Hmm.
And they have coffee. This woman who's very intimidating and very fucking creepy as fuck,
Yeah.
and she's asking her,
Made a career out of playing
she
that creepy woman. I think it's those eyes, man. There's something about those fucking eyes on that lady. It's just, she is creepy as fuck. Yeah.
but she's great, and she's asking about the role. She's like,
Mhm.
I've heard you had a role or whatever, and does it involve a murder? And her eyebrows and the way she's like she's asking questions, but she's making statements,
Yeah.
and she starts to make Laura Dern more and more uncomfortable, and she's telling her these folk tales, these versions, about the marketplace and and the alleyway behind it. And when you step out of the door, you get a reflection is created. A reflection, something about it, like a reflection of evil. It's created,
Mm-hmm.
so it's almost like this experience of like through almost mythological terms, kind of like Black Swan, where you get this like equal or opposite reaction. So it's like these weird Lynchian fucking laws of thermodynamics almost. That it is almost like when I talk about plot as something, every action creating another action, and that moves the plot forward, but not in David Lynch land. In David Lynch land, it's like it creates an opposite fucking plot that is now interwoven. But it's like there's all this stuff that happens. But about the set, she's on the film with Jeremy Irons, and they're like rehearsing, discussing this film that they're gonna do, and they hear a noise on set, and they go to explore what the noise is. And Laura Dern is sitting in a chair, and she like turns. But what actually ends up happening is that the disturbance on the set is actually Laura Dern in another like parallel fucking dimension, like interrupting her own fucking rehearsal from inside, from the other side of the
Mm-hmm.
set, on the other side of the wall. Um, and so it's these realities that are butting up against one another, but also overlapping, crossing over. And so the inclination is to say like, well, I don't fucking get it. I want a fucking A B C D E F G story. Um, I don't want to get fucking pulled over by the cops of cinema asking me to fucking say my ABCs backwards because I only learned them because I sang them. You know, like this is them all jumbled up, but fucking written fucking in reverse. This is fucking different. This is, and it's interesting you bring up like Pollock. If you think of, if we think of history in this kind of like modernist kind of plot driven, everything is a reaction to what came before. Um, you get art as this development, right? Art, all of these things are developments. This is history, right? The way
Yeah.
we think of it, we think of it in those terms. At a certain point, everything is representational. Everything means you draw something, it's a drawing of something else that already exists. And then we get the camera, and now the camera can take images of things that exist. So then these artists are like, well, I want to do so. I don't know how much of this is like them consciously saying this or whatever. I'm not an expert on this, but the idea is that you get impressionists now playing with light, the way that light hits water, ponds. So you have this bridge, you have like flowers, Monet, and they're playing with brush strokes, and now they're playing with light and the way that it represents these things, but not in a very, not in an exact way, because now you have a camera that can do it in an exact way. So now it's like, what can we do that the camera can't do? And then you get more developments, and then you get artists making fragmented images, cubists, Picasso, Braque, at the same time, separately though, are saying, what if I show both sides of someone's, two different profiles of the same face? Not straight on, but like I can show, if you have a profile, there's always going to be basically the side that you don't see. But now what if I show you multiple perspectives of the same thing? What if I can show you the back of someone's head and the face at the same time? And it's all fucking broken up. And then you have surrealists saying like, well, what if I start to depict the reality of dreams? So now it's not only like the world, I'm going to show you the mind. And so you're going to have melting clocks. You're going to have Dali. You're going to have like all this other shit. Then you get these guys that the critics call the abstract expressionists, men and women. There was this group of like loosely together, they were called the Irascibles, de Kooning, Jackson Pollock, Mark Rothko, some other people, that they're like, well, what if I depict my emotions? I'm not going to depict necessarily like a bird. I'm going to show you how the fuck I feel. And I'm full of rage, or I'm full of whatever. Or I'm going to make this thing look like just fuzzy colors, but it's, if you stare at it long enough, it's going to look like it's moving on its own. And whatever that feels like. And so it's not really about what is this supposed to be? It's how did I fucking feel when I made this, and how do you feel now? You know what I mean? And the idea that, you know, people say, well, I could have done that, but it's not about like, in the course of the history of it, it's kind of like things that we take for granted when they are developing. Sometimes they can utterly change the course of whatever art form. When Throbbing Gristle, these industrial artists made fucking like, and they're from Manchester or thereabouts, the home of the birth of the Industrial Revolution place, the birthplace of, I mean, they're making music that sounds like machinery, or when Lou Reed makes Metal Machine music and it's just fucking noise. Yeah, people can say that sounds like shit, but it's a statement. It's, I'm doing this, and at that point, people can listen to that. The next generation are going to listen to that, and they're going to say like, fuck, like, I'm going to take this into all these electronic fucking places, and I'm going to go blah, blah, blah. So going back to David Lynch, it's like, what's exciting when if you ask like, well, is this just David Lynch? Is this a late Tarantino version of David Lynch, where he's just fucking like not unhinged, but like
untethered,
untethered, yeah. Surrounded by yes men, fucking unleashed.
Mm-hmm.
Or is it, however old David Lynch was at the time, he's got to be in his 70s at this point, right?
Yeah, I think
he's
so.
About 77, maybe.
Probably, I would say. Yeah.
Mid to late 70s. Is he still fucking pushing the boundaries of his own fucking art? And still willing to like take it further and further? And how far can I fucking go? You know, is it a question of like, oh, I'm gonna throw everything in including the kitchen sink? Or like I used to, when I was writing papers, when I was in school, I was very self-indulgent. And I mean, and you can still see evidence of that in the show, my self-indulgence and my fucking ego. But with my roommate, I used to fucking, we used to have a joke that, and he was doing like creative writing, and I was seeing how creative I could get in religious studies and history and all this other bullshit, right? Mm-hmm. And he's like, "Are you trying to figure out a way to put in the Roman Empire?" And that became kind of the thing, like this stupid running joke of like, I just want to see if I can do it and get away with it. Is that fucking like, is it Tarantino that's like, well, this is cool, I think this is a great idea because I'm Quentin Tarantino, and so I'm going to put everything in here? Or is it Um, I mean, what I know of the production, what little I know, because I haven't like looked into it, and to a certain extent, I don't give a fuck. I want to know as little about this as possible. But
With
what I
Lynch,
do
I'd have
know,
to say, yeah. With Lynch, I'd like to. There is a burning curiosity just because that's how I feel about movies. But I'm with you. The less I know, the more of a mystery it is. Uh, the more dreamlike and powerful it is too. But
yeah,
I kind of don't want to. It's like love. I don't want to know why I'm in love with this bitch. I just want to love her.
you don't even want to know her name. You don't even want to meet her.
Yeah,
You just want to love her from a distance.
exactly. You know, and that's the power of it.
She doesn't
Yeah.
even have to exist.
Most of the time she
Um,
doesn't. So
all the more sweet. Um, and so it's like what I have read is that, like in passing, is that he basically was shooting this thing as he went, and it was kind of like there was no script, there was no like complete script, and it
well, I
was
think
just kind of like
yeah.
ideas.
I
And
think it started off as
now
short
this,
films and then he put it together like that. Like I think that's what I read that he started off as short films and then it slowly just
well,
morphed into let's jam it all together in some weird kind
yeah,
of Frankenstein.
because there's
Yeah.
a rabbit connection with like Laura Herring too.
Hmm.
I think it's one of the shorts. I don't remember. I have to go back. But that's the beauty of it too, is that like it's kind of like, in the past we've talked about like you see so many things that at one point you're like, oh, I've seen that, and then you watch it and you're like, I've never fucking seen this movie, and then or vice versa, where it's like I've never seen that, and then you're like, no,
Yeah.
I have seen this,
Yeah.
and it's false memories and these fucking deja vus of movies, and um, so then like with me, I start to see because even in this viewing, I was like, isn't fucking Laura Herring in this? Um, and I like after Mulholland Drive, I was like, I had this fucking crazy crush on,
Oh
not
yeah.
crazy, but I had like this Laura Herring crush, right?
Who didn't?
Um, and so that was like, I thought she was in this, and but at the end,
Hmm.
and so it's just like this. I get a sense that the there might be a short with her with rabbits, um,
Sounds so
which is cool.
fucking weird.
Um,
But okay, yeah.
but you get a lot of,
Oh yeah.
you're gonna get with David Lynch, you're gonna get a lot of like women and a lot of old style microphones and women on stage and
Hmm.
red curtains and fucking red rooms and um there are certain and women playing two different roles, but it's the same actress and um you're gonna get a lot of like similar motifs with David Lynch. And you're gonna get these weird jump scares where maybe you're in a dark alley or there's something around the corner or something behind a tree or something behind a this or and you get a sense of doom, but the jump scare happens like maybe you're expecting it more than some fucking horror movie jump scare, but it still freaks you the fuck out because it's almost like fuck. Um there are horror elements. You don't know what the fuck you're watching. There's this underlying sexuality. Um but at the same time there's you get a sense that some of these spaces that you're watching they stink, they smell, maybe like stale beer or something like that. um there's something fucking gross about it, but it's when you can start to get texture, and if you've seen some of David Lynch's art, there's texture there.
Yeah.
um is not non-film art, and David Lynch does music, and Krista Bell, at the end of the film, there's this Krista Bell song, and it just like I felt it so moving and so beautiful, and there's like this uplifting kind of sense at the end, this like almost a, dare I say, optimism, um, hopefulness, something bittersweet but beautiful, and Christabel is one of his muses, And I've seen a concert of hers, and this like strength, sweetness, sexiness, at Hollywood Forever, and in one of the spaces there. Lizzie and I saw her in concert years ago, and it just brings together these other elements. So we need, I think, this kind of cinema. Not only like the shit of like, oh well, stuff that's gonna challenge us, that's gonna push us, but something for the art form itself. It needs to save. There needs to be something to challenge and save the medium from corporate uh, rehashed shit. And we need better audiences. A friend of mine at work and I talk about this. Like we need a generation of people who are educated in cinema, trained in cinema, to sit and watch fucking different types of movies and to really like learn to consume. Not like we need a generation. We not
Hmm.
these fucking like randos that we have like, oh, one guy at work that I talked to, by the water cooler
Yeah.
or whatever, or a handful of people that listen to podcasts like us or ours or whatever. Like I feel like when we were, and this is me sounding like old as fuck, but like when we were kids and we used to walk through the snow to go to the cinema, um, it's I felt like there was this secret knowledge amongst audience members.
Of course. But that's the thing. We didn't we didn't let it stop at the cinema. We didn't let it stop at the theatrical experience, the buying the ticket, the, the figuring out what was playing, the finding out the times, buying the ticket, going in, picking our seat, sitting down, absorbing it. No, that people who truly love cinema the way we do, and this sounds so fucking egotistical and elitist, but I think it's true within the sense of what it is that we do. And when there's a passion for something and there's a love for it, you deep dive. You go further than your average person would. For a lot of people, a movie is simply a movie. A movie is a 2 hour escape.
Yeah,
And for us, it might be an escape, but it's an escape into yourself, which is different from what other people do. I mean, I I feel as though the movies that really stick with me, the Mulholland Drives, the Raging Bulls, Taxi Drivers, Young Frankenstein, even, or Midnight Run. There are certain films that dig into your psyche, and whether they're a psychological horror show like this one, or a character, an anti-hero character study like Taxi Driver and Raging Bull, or an examination and parody of racism or whatever. These films help you give they help you gain an understanding of your own personal feelings on the challenges of this life. Of course, you formulate an opinion regardless of whether or not you're watching something, reading something, listening to something, whatever. I mean, you're going to have an opinion based on just your experience. But when you can look at it through an artistic lens, and when you can look at it as somebody else interpreting it, and then you in turn interpret that, you're being forced to examine the world in a way that maybe wasn't available to you. Maybe that particular way wasn't available to you before you sat down and watched it. So it's a deep dive into yourself and your opinions on a thing, and you're being forced to open up that baggage unload those bags that you carry into a movie and understand what exactly is in there. What is the thing that bothers me? Um, in a previous episode, I don't know which, I think we were talking about Nightmare on Elm Street, and we were talking about Friday the 13th, I think, and I think both of us were in agreement on how those films aren't scary because there's not a psychological truth to them. I mean, there are elements of the jump scare, yes, that are there, and oh, well, wow, I didn't expect that. But for the most part, it's a comical look at horror. When you can watch something like this, and you can watch someone slowly go crazy, as in this film, or Requiem for a Dream, where the danger is very real and very much um, it's very much a trap that exists out there. I remember Bill Hicks having a great joke where he said, anybody can become an addict. It just takes the right set of friends, the right girlfriend, and losing the right job. You know,
Mm.
your friends will drive you. They'll drive you right to the crazy place, and a girlfriend, and all. But it's the reality of life and the horrors of something taken over for you. Now, this is a much more extreme psychological horror show in comparison to Aronofsky's Requiem, but they're both within the realm of a realistic horror that threatens each and every one of us. Um, if you've ever had nightmares, if you've ever been unable to sleep, if you've ever just dreaded going to work, or even coming home and having to spend time with your family, um, you find that moment where the the insecurities and punishment of life, I think, becomes overwhelming. And that's what this movie is. To me, at least. I think this is a very difficult it's a difficult film to watch because it's very honest in its nightmare. In the nightmare that he's putting up on screen. I mean, I can relate to this woman as she slowly loses herself, but I don't know where the story is. I don't know what is this an actress? Or is she dreaming of being an actress? Is the abused woman that we see later on in the film, is that really her? I mean, the cursed film, and Lynch makes a point of bringing that up. Is that just pretense? Is that just something to get us into the story and ultimately leave us unsure of what exactly it is? Not exactly what are we watching, but what is this about that we're watching? And the fact that I'm not sure, and I don't know what the hell, what when I say what the fuck did I just watch, it's because it's honest. I don't I could not begin to describe this film to somebody, as you can tell from this episode. I couldn't begin to tell somebody what this film was about on any straightforward level. I mean, I could say, well, it's about an actress who gets the role of a lifetime, but it's a cursed film. And then she goes into
Hmm.
her own warped psychology. And I'm not sure if she's already fucked up or she's slowly becoming fucked up and she can't trust anything around her. And then there's these scenes with rabbits and women dancing and her dying on the street, but maybe she didn't die. I don't know what the fuck this movie's about, but I love it.
Well, it's like there's a Taoist philosopher named Zhuangzi, um, or Zhuangzi, um, and he has a famous saying where he talks about having fallen asleep and he wakes up. He had a dream, and in the dream he had he had become a butterfly. I don't know if you've heard this story.
No, I've never heard it.
Um,
I've heard of a
and
guy
so he
waking up as a
wakes up.
cockroach, but you know, that's a different
Yeah,
story.
that's different. Yeah, that's a different. That's a different one.
Yeah.
This is a different metamorphosis.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
So he wonders if he had been a man who had dreamt that he had become a butterfly, or now that he's awake, was he a butterfly that had fallen asleep and dreamt that he was a man? And so this is kind of like a sense of that, where there's a scene where Laura Dern she's in one of these realities, she's married, and her co-star is there's this thread of infidelity, and it's like, don't let the art influence reality. Don't fall for this person.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, this is what's happening. This is what happens. Because they're having an affair in the story, and then they start to have an affair in life. So at one point they're doing this scene, and it becomes very much like Perfect Blue, where it's like, you don't know fucking, and this kind of like, thank you, Mr. Burroughs.
Yes.
It led us along this path too, because this was kind of like from that corner that we turned off of that request. So like Perfect Blue, you're watching and you're like, wait, what the fuck? Is this something that is, because in Perfect Blue, she's an actor. So it's like, this is part of the scene. This is part of the show that she's on. Oh, no. This is actually her world. This is like real, supposedly.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're like, no, this is, and you start to get a sense of like, is this her room or is this a set? Or Black Swan. Is this some hallucination that she's having, or is this her like moving through reality now? Or fucking Requiem. Is this a hallucination, or is this is where she's at? So here she's doing this scene and she stops. She interrupts the scene with commentary on the scene. And she's talking to this dude, her co-star, who now she's like having an affair with. And she's like, this sounds so much like our script.
Mm-hmm.
And then the director, Jeremy Irons, is like, what the fuck is going on? Like, cut. Like, what the fuck is happening? Because that's not part of the scene. But she's commenting during filming that their dialogue sounds so much like the script, because she thinks that it's like actual like shit that she's experiencing with her now lover, co-star. And so then when he interrupts her after her having interrupted the scene that she's in, she's like, what the fuck? Like, and you're watching it and you're going, what the fuck? Like, and then there are moments where they're doing a scene, but you're not sure if they're doing a scene, because you're like, is this real, or is this the scene in the movie, or is this the scene in the movie within the movie?
Yeah.
Like, what is it? And then it takes an hour and a half for things to get really weird, because that's when they even get more strange. Like, you're just fucking, the first half is weird enough, but like, just let it get to the second half. Then stuff gets like even more loose. And then you're seeing Laura Dern fucking like really, really having fun. really working, really fucking like putting it out there, and I can imagine the challenge, but also like the enjoyment of being able to do all these fucking different things and have to go to all these different places as an actor within the same fucking film. Whereas normally it's like you have this very limited like line in terms of your role. And movie actors have to, if you do a play, every time you do the play, you have to go through those emotions in order of the scenes, which is kind of like, which is typically in the order of the story. So there's a building, a climactic point, and then a resolution point, and a release, and then the curtain, and it's done. In films, shit gets shot out of order, so you might end up having to do the fucking biggest fucking scene in the film, the most intense, violent, whatever kind of scene first, because the production demands that or whatever.
Yeah.
Or you might have to play, you grow your hair out before you shoot the film, and then you fucking you have to do those long-haired fucking, I've been in prison for in the dungeon for fucking like 1,000 years scenes, and then they cut your hair, and then now you're fucking a teenager before you got caught and taken to the castle or whatever. And you're playing stuff all out of order. This is fucking playing stuff all out of order, but playing different roles, different versions, different realities. And so it must have been another level of a challenge as an actor, but also very, very fun.
Yeah.
To play crazy things.
To play crazy,
to play
noir,
things.
to play villain. Yeah, there's just so much weird shit in this movie. And you show up at a yard at some point, and you pick up a screwdriver that's gonna stay there for the rest of the movie. And is that foreshadowing, or is that just setting up? That's not foreshadowing. That's
well, it is, but it isn't.
It is,
it's aftershadowing too, because it's like the lady tells her, she's asking her questions, and she's like, if it were tomorrow, you would know. And you would be sitting over there, and she looks, and then they both look, and then it cuts to, you see Laura Dern sitting on that fucking couch. In this ornate fucking like mansion. And so right away your sense of time is it's like the story she tells, these stories, the lady, like I said earlier. A boy walks through a doorway and he creates like an evil version, or some type of mirror, or a girl behind the marketplace. So it gets very dreamlike. And it's one of those things where in dreams, and I mean, this is Lynchian fucking in dreams, like Lynch uses that song.
There's a candy-colored clown.
They call the Sandman, yeah.
He's wandering all over this fucking thing.
Yeah. Laura Dern as Roy Orbison. You have this understanding of your dreams where it's like shit is not explicit, but you're like, oh, I was this person. I didn't see myself, but I know that was me. You get that sense somehow that you're like, or you see a person and you're like, I was half man, half giraffe, zebra, squid, but it was me. I know it was me.
Yeah. I don't know how it was me, but it was me.
Yeah. And I was making this pizza, right? And it makes no fucking sense. And then you're like, but then in walked a squirrel in a trench coat. And that was my godmother. And I haven't fucking talked to my godmother, but whatever, right? Mm-hmm. You just know that person represents that person. And then stuff becomes so vivid and so strange. And you have these weird juxtapositions of things that like you normally wouldn't think of in your conscious life. Um, but sometimes you're thinking about it after and you're like, I wonder if that meant that or whatever. But even sometimes in the dream, stuff means stuff. Where you're like, every time I picked up the phone, it would cause a child in Bolivia pain in my dream. And so I noticed I didn't want to pick up the phone, but I did. And I knew whatever, right?
Hmm.
It's like that where you're watching this film and you're starting to get a grasp of like, this is that, but then something else subverts that because we're trying to find those patterns. We're trying to gain our cinematic equilibrium. We're trying to like navigate, and we're like, okay, like it's like you said, I get it. Or I think I get it. There's Laura Dern, the actor. There's Laura Dern, the character in that film. There's Laura Dern now going upstairs to talk to that cop or whatever he is about her traumatic experiences with violent men, and how she fucked them up. And there's this scene where she's using more of a southern accent. There's this one where maybe it's less. There are the rabbits. There are the prostitutes. There's here we are in Hollywood and Vi. Here we are on fucking Sunset Boulevard or whatever. Here we are, and then you're watching all this shit unfold, and then you are getting the sense of moments where cinema itself has leaked into the film. Where I just said Sunset Boulevard, and that lady who comes and visits her house has this Gloria Swanson-esque
Hmm.
crazy face. The makeup, the hair is almost done to look like her. It seems like now that I said that. Um, Using actors that are already well known, but they're Jeremy Irons gives a certain energy in a film. Just his presence, no matter how brief. Julia Ormond, where you're just kind of like, was that Julia Ormond?
Yeah.
I mean, you asked me that earlier. You're
Yeah,
like,
because
you
at the
had that
first I'm
experience.
sitting there
Like,
watching it going, that looks like Julie Ormond. Why? And you're like, why is she in here? Why is she in this? And it's like, what the fuck am I watching? I mean, I've never said that to myself so many times in a movie where it's just like, without wanting to turn it off. And but I was just captivated. I was like, well, where is it going? I gotta see how this is gonna play out. I gotta see how this is gonna resolve itself. I gotta figure out, and with Lynch, there is that understanding that it might not resolve itself. It might just go. It might just continue spiraling out of control, and there is no sense to be made out of it. I mean, I think he leans into the idea that life doesn't make sense, so why should the movie? And um, but it kind of does make sense within the parameters of what Lynch is and what he's done before. But then I have to ask myself, am I making excuses for David Lynch? I really don't know. This is a confusing movie that I'm going to have to go back to at some point. Um, but I enjoy the questions that it's raising. I enjoy the challenge because you just don't get too many films that challenge your intellect the way this one does. Um,
or your conceptions of what a film is,
yeah, yeah. You
because you can, you can, the whole going back to that of like, am I giving this person too much slack?
hmm.
Well, if you go to a restaurant and you order a hamburger and they bring you a hamburger, but it it's it doesn't meet the standards of your understanding of a hamburger based on your history of eating fucking hamburgers and the history of hamburgers in the world, then you're like, well, I know what a fucking hamburger is, and it is a hamburger, but it sucks because whatever. But if you go to some fucking like hamburger stand as chemistry fucking booth place, and this person's like, I'm gonna give you a deconstructed fucking hamburger, and it's just these little fucking ramekins of fucking like it looks like pudding, and this is a fucking green one, that's pickle. Over here it's mustard. This is actually the bread, and you can see the little bits of sesame right there. This one is the meat, but it's like as a pudding, and it'll give you the effect of how you want yours medium rare, so it has a little bit of more blood, and you can go but it's a hamburger, but it's deconstructed, and you're going, what the fuck is this? This is not a hamburger. But then you taste it, and you're like, and then you dip and you dip, and you're like, no, I mean this is a fucking like this is an amazing hamburger, but it's like it's tastes like a hamburger, but it doesn't look like a hamburger. And then the asshole with the beanie and tattoos at the counter goes like, see, I just fucking challenged your concept of what a hamburger is, bro. This is that, but better than my shitty fucking analogy. This is fucking someone giving you an alternative of what cinema is.
Yeah.
But it has elements of cinema in a way that's in multiple ways deconstructed. But also not deconstructed, because this is a film. It's not just pieces of film put together. This is a film.
Well, everything that you're saying is correct in regards to Lynch and the history. I mean, if you've watched enough Lynch, which I feel at this point I have, at this point, you definitely have watched enough Lynch to know. But if you're going to be fair about movie watching, if you're going to be fair about looking at the career of a director, Lynch wouldn't be the first director to lose track of his own vision and become a parody of himself, and especially with guys like Herzog and Lynch, and on a more popular scale, maybe a Tim Burton. It's easy to begin aping their own
style.
Their own style. I don't think that's what's happening here. I think that he's exaggerating his own style. He's going even further into it. And I think I think you can see I think you can see somebody who loses their way with a Tim Burton film. If you look at something like Beetlejuice, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Beetlejuice, the first two Batman films, into Sleepy Hollow or Sweeney Todd or some of the other films, there is a definite. It would seem to me that Tim Burton has the idea that I have to be even more Tim Burton at this point, whether right or wrong, or specifically with something like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. That,
yeah,
where it becomes. And definitely Alice in Wonderland. So I don't mean to shit on Tim Burton. I think he's a great visualist, but there comes a point where it's like where it becomes embarrassing how style takes over. Whereas you have someone like Gilliam, whose films just become more. The visual becomes greater, the story becomes more abstract and difficult to grasp. You see that with Tideland, you see that with Parnassus, and you definitely see it with Zero Theorem.
Yeah.
But with
Malick as well.
Malick, yeah. But with Lynch, it all seems like it was heading here. There was no point in watching this movie where I think to myself, well, I might not expect the narrative, but it's not like I don't expect the style. As surprising as the
or
style might be,
yeah,
and as entertaining and both captivating, there's nothing here that tells me that's a left turn stylistically. It that's not a dig on them. I think this film
yeah,
does exactly what it's supposed to do, and it moves beautifully in a direction that Lynch wants it to go. I think he delivers. Could it have been
yeah.
shorter? I don't know.
What it sounds like you're saying is that basically like this is the natural evolution of David Lynch. Like this is the development of
Yeah,
David Lynch to get to this place.
that's a big part of it. Yeah,
And yeah, I mean, you look at if you look at his filmography, um, from Eraserhead and then the
hmm
kind of like industry Elephant Man to the challenges of the production of dealing with a studio with Dune, and then boom, Blue Velvet, um, and then going into Wild at Heart, and the Twin Peaks film, and then Lost Highway. It's all moving into that direction of like, especially like Lost Highway. Skip over the straight story is like a little side thing,
it's an
but like
outlier.
into yeah, into Mulholland Drive, did a fragmentation of the woman of the female protagonist. Um, to see, and then right now that I'm like, I feel like I'm having a fucking deja vu, like right this moment. Um, because I feel like
It's the
and I probably have said it
it's the right
before,
episode.
because I know, um, and I do fucking repeat myself a lot. But yeah, you go Lost Highway, Mulholland, this, and you get kind of like he's working on stuff with some of the same themes. He's going further and further. We talked last time about how um, Aronofsky, he did Requiem. No, what did we
He
see?
did
Now I'm
Pie
fucking like
and
this
then
sounds like our
Requiem.
script.
Yeah.
No, I know that, but what I'm saying is no, he did The Wrestler,
Mm,
and then he did Black Swan,
yes.
and then he did The Whale.
Yeah.
And there are thematic, you could say that that's a kind of triptych where they're like spiritual, not sequels, but they're spiritual sibling films.
Yeah.
Um, because thematically, you have these main characters that have these strained relationships with its parent child. Um, each character is very much in a certain way trapped within their body, and their body is their identity. Um, and their identity and their body is something that causes them pain. They push their bodies in ways that deal with obsession, and ultimately they're taken to the point of destruction because of um, their relationship to their bodies in the world. Those things, is he making the same film? No. Is he making the same film, or is he making different films with some of the same ingredients? Yes. Um, it's almost like that with with Lynch in terms of going back Lost Highway, Mulholland, and this. You have these female characters that are. It goes back to, in that sense, Vertigo. It goes back to fucking Hitchcock. When you're watching Vertigo, it's like, what am I watching? Who am I watching? Who is this woman? Um, who's being tricked? Am I
Yeah.
tricking myself? Um, this kind of split between women, where it's like, well, they look the same, but are they the same? They seem the same, but there's this that's different. There's this, there's this. Um, it seems like a larger version of some of the same stuff, a crazier version. He's not doing the same things in the same way. He's doing certain things now in a different way. He's pushing it further. And I mean, at this point, this film is from like 05 or 06.
So six.
And we're 2024 now.
We're 18 years later, yeah.
And he's done the Twin Peaks Return. Who knows what? And I don't know what his last shorts were. Who knows what the fuck else he's gonna do? But it'll be interesting to see if he does another feature, what that's gonna look like. Is it gonna be really short? Or you know what I mean?
Well, I'm
there's no telling.
certainly excited about the potential. I mean, I think he's one of the great visionaries of cinema. I think he's one of the guys that I think he's one of the fearless few that is able to dig into something and not be worried about popular acceptance of it. He and you know, a lot of this he does for himself. I mean, I know you're an artist and you're putting it out there for a public, but I think there's a purity in the lengths to which he will go to make it accessibly inaccessible. I don't know if it's this film or one of the other films, but somebody was interviewing him and he told them, "This is my most personal film." And the host, the interviewer, said, "Would you like to elaborate on that?" And in that little sweet, effeminate way that he said he's like, "No." And that was it. No, I don't want to comment on it. I don't want to elaborate. I don't feel the need to. All you need to know is that it's a very personal film for me. And there's a part of me that really appreciates that and is respectful of his right to have that privacy concerning something that is art. That's magic.
That is magic. It's like you're gonna ask the fucking great illusionist. I mean, you want to know,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't want to. I mean, then and there, you don't fucking want to know.
Well, you don't really want to know, but more importantly, you don't deserve to know.
Yeah.
You need to figure some things out for yourself, and you need to trust that your own interpretation is valid.
And to take it even further, you deserve to not know.
Yeah, that's probably even more important. You deserve to not know. That's us rambling for an hour and a half about something that we're not sure of. We don't know if we'll ever know, but it's fun. Is there anything left to say regarding this? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's all that's left is, at the end of the day, it's money.
Oh, yeah.
Buymeacoffee.com/watch RickRamos. This episode goes to Charles Mahoney. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
You
Mahoney.
deserve to not know.
We appreciate that. We appreciate Mr. Mahoney. We appreciate all the rest of you. Thanks for listening. Next week we'll be back with all new old movies. Enjoy. Bye-bye.